From the opinion pages of the Wall Street Journal, this is Potomac Watch.
New York Attorney General Letitia James files a civil lawsuit against Donald Trump and 3 of his children, claiming they committed real estate fraud. But what's in the suit, and how much of this is politics versus the law? Also, Senate Republicans block a Democratic campaign finance bill over concerns it's a naked attempt to limit political speech. And as it's Friday, we'll take up some listener questions. Welcome to Potomac Watch. I'm Kim Strassel with the Wall Street Journal. I'm joined today by my fellow columnist in arms, Alicia Finley. And joining us for her debut performance, Colin Levy, a member of our editorial board. Welcome to you both. So the New York Attorney General, Letitia James, campaigned for her job in 2018 in part on a promise to sue Donald Trump. And it would appear that she's holding up to that pledge. Her lawsuit announced on Wednesday claims the former president and his children inflated the value of assets in order to get better terms on bank loans and insurance. Let's listen to the AG for a second lay out her case.
I am announcing that today we are filing a lawsuit against Donald Trump for violating the law as part of his efforts to generate profits for himself, his family, and his company. The complaint demonstrates that Donald Trump falsely inflated his net worth by billions of dollars to unjustly enrich himself and to cheat the system, thereby cheating all of us. He did this with the help of the other defendants, his children, Donald Trump Jr., Ivanka Trump, and Eric Trump.
So you heard the Attorney General, quite dramatic there. Colin, there's more than 280 pages in this suit. It contains more than 200 examples of what Ms. James claims are fraudulent valuations. So just to start, can you lay out a bit more what she's alleging and maybe some examples of it?
Yeah, boy. I mean, it's certainly a huge laundry list. I mean, none of this is really a bombshell, right? We know Trump spent, most of his life inflating how rich he is and how powerful he is and how smart he is and how good he looks in so many ways, right? But as you look at what she's laying out here, there's a lot here. There's no question about it. I mean, she goes through everything from his apartment, which at some point he said was 30,000 square feet when it was somewhere more around 10,000 square feet, right? No surprise. And the value of golf courses, some property in Scotland where he was basically saying that the property was worth a whole bunch of money because he was going to build all sorts of houses there, when in fact he only had zoning to build different houses, not as many, about half as many as he said. So he was inflating the value there. She looks at everything from the valuations of things in Las Vegas to Mar-a-Lago to Trump Tower. It's almost as though there's every single thing that he has. Most of the numbers she seems to push back on. And look, we know that he does a lot of this kind of thing just in the way that he talks and all of that. And I'm sure that we can imagine that he did the same when he was presenting his case to bankers. That doesn't really stretch the imagination.
It also strikes me that this is kind of the nature of real estate, especially high stakes real estate in some of these areas. But one other thing that jumps out, this is a civil trial. The AG lacks the authority here to bring a criminal suit, and she's referred her findings also to federal law enforcement. But it's notable the Manhattan District Attorney declined to file any charges after looking at the exact same case. And that might be because one thing I'm struggling to find here is a victim. The AG claims that Donald Trump and his children somehow cheated the system. I'm not really sure the system is a victim. These were private loans taken out from private banks, which made money on the loans. There was no default. So, Alicia, isn't this in some sort of way just a private transaction and therefore somewhat bizarre that the AG is after the fact claiming fraud in a transaction that for all intents and purposes had on all sides willing participants?
Right. So a lot of the stuff that the banks at issue here could have actually, they did send appraisers and assessors in some cases, so they could independently verify the valuation of the real estate. They could also have sued if they thought that they were being harmed in this case. And it's not really clear where Letitia James comes up with her supposed $250 million in damages that she claims that they suffered as a result of his quote unquote fraudulent practices. It may be in some ways a reference to the lower fees or interest rates he was able to secure, but it doesn't seem like that they actually were harmed, as you point out, in any way. And if they were, they could have brought a fraud suit under common law in the state of New York. They didn't. The other issue, I think, in a criminal trial that we have to keep in mind is intent. I think it could also be hard for Letitia James to prove that Trump knowingly and intentionally tried to defraud the banks. One leitmotif in the lawsuit is that Trump was really trying to impress these journalists at Forbes by overinflating his assets. He even brought a crew of journalists, literally a crew of journalists from Forbes, to show off his apartment and told them that it was 30,000 square feet, even though he had been told many times in the past, that it's only around 10,000. But he kept on insisting, no, that's 30,000. Maybe in his mind it was, maybe that's Donald Trump for you. You could tell him anything, the sky is blue and he'll insist it's green and he'll literally think that he's right about that. That's his personality. He's fabulous. We all know that. But did he actually have malicious intent? Well, I don't know. I think that's left to be proven.
Just to build on that intent point, show me a major builder that doesn't overvalue their assets, and they probably are out of business. You have a situation in real estate, better or worse, where real estate values have huge amounts of variability, and these banks are probably quite used to dealing with how the numbers are presented to them. The idea here, again, I think this is where Letitia James is going to have trouble really substantiating, is that it is hard to defraud someone who willingly accepts the data and has the resources, as banks do, to investigate it. So as a legal matter, I think that's where it's going to get tricky.
Well, maybe not even just a major builder aspect of this, but anyone who's ever engaged in real estate. It's the nature of real estate. I mean, anyone who's ever sold a house or bought a house, it's all about how much are you saying that your house is really worth and how much is the other side willing to pay, or how much do they think it's worth. It's very subjective. But from a stepped back point, what really, really troubles me about all of this is simply the James campaign promise that she was going to bring down Donald Trump, and saying it before she was even in office, before she'd done a scrap of investigating, and not to automatically reach for the authoritarian comparisons, but it kind of reminds me of Lavrentiy Beria, who was the secret police chief under Stalin, who infamously said, "Show me the man and I'll show you the crime." This is just fundamentally in conflict with American procedures for justice. And also there's the timing of this, right before the midterms, right when Democrats want to keep Donald Trump in focus. So, Colin, having gone through this lawsuit, I mean, how much of this is politics? And even if it's rooted in law, how much faith can people have in the suit's legitimacy given those pledges and the timing?
Look, it's really hard to look at this lawsuit without seeing that political overlay, again, because of the statements that she made when she was running for election. When you come out and say, look, this guy, he's a criminal and we're going to go get him. As soon as you say that and you're actually running for attorney general, I think she probably fell into the trap of, well, every Democrat running for office is going to put Trump on their headlines and we're going to go after Trump. But she has a different job, right? When she says that he's a criminal and we're going to go after him, it has a totally different meaning than if that's just some random person.
Alicia, Ms. James is asking for Trump and his children to be forcibly barred from ever doing business in the state again, which would obviously destroy his real estate empire, as well as that $250 million in restitution. Since it's a civil charge, the evidence standard is lower. She requires only a preponderance of evidence for a victory. What are the chances, though, that this goes to trial or gets settled beforehand? What do you think its merits are in court?
Well, I think it's a reach, and that's why I think it'll probably be settled beforehand. Of course, Donald Trump won't want to settle this, and that's the problem. Usually when there are disputes over either tax payments, which are also at issue here, or these kinds of what are valuations of assets, these are usually settled by government and private parties or between private parties. They don't want to go through court because the litigation can be costly. In this case, Donald Trump, though, may want to concede on this point, especially if he plans to, run for president. So otherwise, I would imagine that this is the kind of lawsuit that would end up in a settlement. But for Donald Trump's desire probably to vindicate himself, this may actually could go to trial.
I would see it as a situation where he's just so happy to pick this fight. There might be a lot there to look through in the actual court documents. But when he takes it to just say, look, I'm being attacked once again by these same people, it seems like it's actually almost a good issue for him on his I'm a victim position.
Yeah, this will be an interesting thing because the very kind of nature of Donald Trump that drove him to make all these statements about his assets will probably drive him to not just put this behind him the way that it would probably be the easiest way to go.